I am Kaipada Vinod Chandra from 3rd group. Today I am going to speak about the problem based learning or PBL. PBL is a student centered pedagogy in which the students learn about a subject through the experience of solving an open ended problem found in trigger material. The PBL process does not focus on problem solving with a defined solution, but it allows for the development of other desirable skills and attributes. This includes knowledge acquisition, enhanced group collaborations, and communication. The PBL process was developed for medical education and has since been broadened in application of other programs of learning. The process allows for learners to develop skills used for their future practice. It enhances critical appraisal, literature retrieval, and encourages ongoing learning within a team environment. The PBL tutorial process involves working in small groups of learners. Each student takes a role within the group that may be formal or informal, and the role often alternates. It is focused on the student's reflection and reasoning to construct their own learning. There are many advantages of PBL. It is a students focused, which allows for active learning and better understanding and retention of the knowledge. It also helps to develop life skills and are applicable to many domains. It can be used to enhance content knowledge while simultaneously fostering the development of communication, problem solving, critical thinking, collaboration, and self directed learning skills. PBL may position students to optimally function using real world experiences um, by harnessing collective group intellect. Differing perspectives may offer different perception and solution to a problem. There are also many disadvantages of problem based learning. According to Wood in 2003, the major disadvantage to this process involves the utilization of resources and tutor facilitation. It requires more staff to take an active role in facilitation and group led discussion, and some educators find PBL facilitation difficult and frustrating. It is resource intensive because it requires more physical space and more accessible computer resources to accommodate simultaneous smaller group learnings. Students also report uncertainty with the information overload and are unable to determine how much study is required and the relevance of information available. Students may not have access to teachers who serve as inspirational role models that traditional curriculum offers. Implementing problem based learning. Problem based learning will have different implications if you are involved on a curriculum committee than if your involvement is as a tutor to a small group undertaking the PBL exercise. In the former situation, you will be engaged in reviewing the evidence of the effectiveness of PBL, in discussing the politics and practicalities of making such a major change to the curriculum, and in conducting or assessing information sessions and workshop for the staff or medical school in order to gain their support. Course design consideration. There is no single best way of approaching the task, and it will be important in ascertain which of the many styles of PBL you are expected to implement. In general, PBL curricula are constructed in a modular format with blocks of several weeks being committed to a common theme. Factors to be taken into account will include tutoring. The first task you are likely to have to perform in a PBL course is that of a tutor. Your role will be generally be one of the facilitator rather than the expert, a role you will initially find rather difficult. In brief, your main task is to help your students to develop the skills to work efficiently as a group member. To do this, the student must understand the purpose of their PBL activity and not see the session simply as one of solving the problem. They are usually expected to learn a lot of stuff. The process skills they will need to do this effectively include group skills, information literacy, then negotiating, interviewing, and presenting. So while you may appear to be teaching your subject less, you should have the pleasure of observing students learn the expected content in much more interesting and exciting way. Staff resources for problem-based learning. One of the major concerns of medical school contemplating changes to PBL is that of staff resources. It is widely perceived that PBL is dependent on small groups and that this will demand more staff or a considerable extra time commitment for existing staff. This may well be true if one is trying to in, emulate the McMaster mode of PBL. However, it is possible for compromises to be made. For instance, if non-expert tutors are acceptable for some components of the course, it may be possible to use staff who previously have not had a major teaching role. Another alternative is to undertake the normally tutor-led sessions in large group settings. We have some experience of this first year foundation course which will aim to introduce students to the process of PBL. Whatever the approach is used to need for the effective staff development in paramount if PBL is to be successfully implemented. Unfortunately, may schools fail in this regard with the inevitable disappointments to staff and students. Particularly helpful as workshops in which staff take different roles in PBL groups exercise and observing a real student PBL group in action. Our second topic is assessing the students. Student assessment is arguably the centerpiece of teaching and learning process and therefore the subject of much discussion in scholarship of teaching and learning. Without some method of obtaining and analyzing evidence of students' learning, we can never know whether our teaching is making a difference. That is, teaching requires some process through which we can come to know whether students are developing the desired knowledge and skills and therefore whether our instruction is effective. Learning assessment is like a magnifying glass we hold up to students learning to discern whether the teaching and learning process is functioning well or is in need of a change. To provide an overview of learning assessment, the teaching guide has several goals. First one is to define the student learning assessment and why it is important. Second, to discuss the several approaches that may help to guide and refine student assessment. Third, to address the various methods of student assessment including the test and the essay. And fourth, to offer the several resources for further research. The scholarship of teaching and learning discuss two general forms of assessment. The first is summative assessment. It is one that is implemented at the end of the course of study, for example via comprehensive final exams or papers. Its primary purpose is to produce an evaluation that sums up students' learning. Summative assessment is comprehensive in nature and is fundamentally concerned with the learning outcomes. While summative assessment is often useful for communicating final evaluation of the student's achievement, it does so without providing opportunities for students to reflect on their progress, alter their learning and demonstrate growth or improvement. Nor it does allow instructors to modify their teaching strategies before students' learning in a course has concluded. The second form is formative assessment. Involves the evaluation of students' learning at intermediate points before summative form. Its fundamental purpose is to help the students during the learning progress by enabling them to reflect on their challenges and growth so they may improve. By analyzing the students' performance through the formative assessment and sharing results with them, instructors help students to understand their strengths and weaknesses and to reflect on how they need to improve over the course of their remaining studies. It is important to recognize that both summative and formative assessment indicate the purpose of assessment, not the method. Different methods of assessment can either be summative or formative depending on when and how the instructor implements them. What you should know about the educational measurements. First one, validity. Content validity is the first priority of any assessment. It is a measure of the degree to which the assessment contains a representative sample of the material taught in the course. A numerical value cannot be placed against it, and it must be judged according to the objective of the assessment. Therefore, in approaching any assessment, the first question you must ask is what are the objective of the course?
Devendranath Roshni and I'm from Group 3. Today I'm going to discuss about assessing the students. The first topic is reliability. It is the measure of consistency and precision with which it tests what it's supposed to be tested. A common approach used in multiple choice tests is to produce a measure of internal consistency. Another key component in determining the reliability of an assessment is the consistency of marking. There are many ways for improving validity and reliability. The next topic is practicality, and an assessment scheme must be practical. There will be other considerations of particular nature that are peculiar in your own circumstances and that you will have to consider. Next topic, norm referenced versus criterion referenced assessment. This traditional approach is one that we urge you to move away from. Some assumptions made are not appropriate to assessing learning in universities. The issue of standard setting is one which is achieving growing attentions as the focus of assessment moves from norm reference to criterion reference or competency based testing. The next topic is positive impact on learning. At a methodological level, an emphasis on objective testing such as a true or false multiple choice questions will almost certainly encouraged. Which is encouraged and rewarded the use of surface learning strategies by students, rather than approaching that demand higher level intellectual processes such as resourcing and analysis. Next is type of assessment. There are many types. First is essay, second is short answer, third is structural, fourth is objective test, and fifth is direct observation, and sixth is oral, seventh is structural clinical or practical assessment, eighth is self-assessment, and ninth is learning portfolio. So we will discuss about the first topic, that is essay. The essay is the only mean we have to assess the students. Essay questions tend to be of two kinds. First is extended response and the second is restricted response. Not only can such attachment provided very useful in individual, but used early in the course with model answers. Next, second topic is short answers and simple computation questions. If one of the purpose of the assessment is to cover a wide content area, then short answer questions have distinctive advantages. The major limitations of the short question test is that it is not suitable for testing complex learning outcome. Next, the third topic is structural tests. It is of two types. And the first one is patient management problem, and it aims to represent with the varying degrees of faculties and interaction with the patients, incorporating various amount of data gathering, diagnosis and management. Second is modified essay questions, that is MEQ. This is now being used with increasing frequency. MEQs are very popular with students, particularly when it is used informative assessment. Next topic is objective test, that is the characteristics of such tests are the high reliability of scoring and rapidity of scoring and the encourage of staff's time with this task. And choosing this type of questions, it is of three types, and that is the first type is true or false, and the second type is multiple choice, and the third type is matching.
Здравствует, my name is Kalatil Muhammad Alfat Rahman. and I'm from third group. So direct observation, observation of the student performing a technical or an interpersonal skill in the real stimulated or examination would appear to be the most valid way of assessing such skills. Various ways have been suggested by which these limitations might be minimized. Like, one is to improve the method of scoring, and another is to improve the performance of the observer. And the oral examination has for been the predominant method, and sometimes the online method used for clinical assessment of medical students. Without a doubt, the face-to-face interaction between student and the examiner provides a unique opportunity to test interactive skills which cannot be assessed in any other. Structured clinical or practical assessment. One of the most interesting of these developments has been the objective structured clinical examination, firstly described by Harden. Self-assessment, it is an system which involves the students in establishing the criteria and the standards that will apply to their work, and then in making they will generate marks which are reasonably consistent with staff marks. The learning of portfolio, requesting students to respond to objective tests and write essays and participate in clinical examination. A presentation of items of evidence to show what learning has taken place. Assessing students with disability, it is a good practice for staff in departments to share alternative assessment or arrangements on a regular basis, as such as arrangement are likely to be specified to both the kind of disability. And major purpose of assessing students learning are to diagnose difficulties and to provide students with their feedback. Спасибо.